your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That was a brand new song called The End from the album The Wicked King Part 2. The name of the band is the Crown Remnant. They're a newer band that's just getting their way out there today. And on the line right now is the lead singer of the Crown Remnant. It is Geordy Shallan. Geordy, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. I love what you guys have been doing. I checked out the last couple episodes, and you guys are funny as hell.
Well, thanks, man. Well, I've got to say, we may be funny, but you are creative as hell. This project, I'll tell you straight up, I didn't know dick about the Crown Remnant before I was reached out to by the publicist. And I listened to The Wicked King about 30 times because I just absolutely love what you're doing. And then
thank you so much.
And then I went back and listened to part 1 of it because it was available on Google Play. So I was like, all right, let me try and get my head more around the full picture. Now what I find most appealing to your band, and this is just me, is you are one of those rare few breeds of bands that you cannot define, which is great in this world of metal where everything has to be this core or this thrash or this progressive or whatever.
100%.
You guys, I mean, you have songs in on the records. You listen to The End as an example. It starts off and you're thinking right away, all right, this is traditional thrash. It's Havoc, it's Municipal Waste, it's old Exodus start, and then all of a sudden it goes somewhere completely different, and it takes some new metal twists and progressive turns, and it just takes you to a lot of places, which to me is excellent because there's too few bands that are willing to leave themselves kind of outside of the labeling that most bands get into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a big thing for us, and it's funny, like, The End to this day is probably one of my favorite songs I think we've written as a band because it is just weird as fuck.
Right.
There's just no other way to put it. But that's kind of the point of who we are as a band. Is, as you kind of said, we hate the whole genre boundary thing. It's stupid. And that's exactly what our sound is supposed to be, is a blend of everything. Because we go in and we've all got our different backgrounds. Like our drummer's a big like thrash and death metal guy. I grew up in like the classic heavy metal and metalcore communities. My guitarist actually has like a jazz and a classical background. Like, we want to just fuse all of these things together. And it's just kind of what ended up happening. And I think that's so fucking important these days. It's like every band you hear on the radio or online is 4 minutes. It's got to have a breakdown. It's got to have some sort of scream vocal, or it's a thrash band, or it's just yelling, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all we seem to have right now. And we were so ardently against that. We wanted to throw everything away and just say, let's just do some weird shit and see what happens.
Right. And you definitely did.
Yeah.
No, well, and dude, what's crazy, at least to me, is, obviously when I was getting ready to do the interview, I did some quick Googling, I'll call it research, but let's be honest, it was just Googling. And it seems like every review you get is lazier than the last. And I'm not trying to shit on anybody else, but it's like every review says, well, with this Killswitch Engage type sound, and everything is Killswitch Engage, Killswitch Engage. And if any of these guys have heard a Killswitch Engage record, it while there might be some elements here and there in your records, I'm not hearing that you guys sound like Killswitch Engage. Not at all.
Well, I do appreciate that. We were definitely trying to craft our own sound, but I am a very big Killswitch fan, so I don't take this compliment. But I would agree. A lot of our songs sound absolutely nothing like Killswitch Engage.
No.
And, that's something that just comes with music. It's always going to get compared to the next band. I mean, if you look at somebody like Avenged Sevenfold, they put out Hail the King, and everybody was immediately like, oh, you're trying to sound like this band. You're trying to sound like this band, rather than, they're just writing songs.
Right.
And I think that with us, people are always going to get a little lazy because we're smaller right now, and that's fine, The fact that they're giving us the publicity in general is something that we're very appreciative of. But we do have a very diverse sound that I'm really proud of. We don't really we're not like a death metal band where it's all growls, and we're not quite, some like old school heavy metal where it's all like really borderline operatic, clean scene stuff. We're trying to just fuse everything. And I think that's also kind of why we get compared to bands like Killswitch Engage, is because they were kind of known for being one of the original, like, metalcore bands that really kind of infused the East Coast, like, hardcore sound with, like, really nice, like, death metal and, like, thrash metal roots.
Sure.
And so I understand that. I do. But I would say, yeah, we're definitely not Killswitch Engage.
No.
I love me some Adam D. I love me some Jesse Leach. Love me some Howard Jones. But we're not them.
Right. No, I totally agree, man. Well, dude, for people that do not know, why don't you give us a little history about your band? Because, you know, if nothing else, you guys have a very unique individual history that has really nothing to do with metal. You know, and
No.
I mean, you guys are like from all different avenues of life that have come together for this metal project.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story. So I graduated from college in 2016, and in high school I was in a bunch of bands, and it was like kind of my forte, and it was like, I love doing this. I love going to shows, playing house shows, doing all these things. And when I got to college, I studied music and business, and I absolutely hated studying those things, so I ended up switching to studying like theater and film, which are kind of like my hobbies and my passions and have been for a really long time. And so I get out of school and I say, fuck, man, I miss music.
Right.
And so what I end up doing is I write about, 20, 30 songs. And then I go to my buddy, Will, who was actually our lead guitarist, and I said, hey, man, I've got like 20 or 30 songs. And he immediately goes, okay, 5 of these are good, 4 of these are usable. And then we end up working on them. And that's kind of how it all spiraled out and kind of snowballed into this bigger thing where it was like me and Will sat down, we started writing, and then we had more people come in, and it just became this much bigger thing, and we kind of had members come in and out, and eventually we ended up having this lineup that kind of had a lot of the core idea in common of we had all kind of given up on music and then decided to come back to it because it meant so much to us.
Okay.
So, like, before I had even started the band, I was actually doing, like, stand-up comedy and film acting. And I was just like, this isn't right. This is not right for me. This is not the only thing I want to do in my life. And so I had to go out, and I went from being a stand-up comic doing, like, L.A. circuit to just playing metal shows.
Right.
And it was a really weird kind of, like, turn of events, I guess, because no one expected it. Because, you know, even my parents, when I told them, hey, I'm starting a band, they were like, I thought you left that in high school. Which I was like, okay, fuck you guys too, but whatever. I say that with love. I love my parents. If they're listening to this, please don't kill me. That being said, so I ended up reaching out to Will, and Will is just, he's the best musician that I know.
Okay.
So it just made sense. And we had this core love of a lot of the same bands. Like, we have very differing tastes on a lot of other bands, but our core favorite bands are kind of all the same. And because of that, we really wanted to kind of reinvigorate what we felt metal was missing, which is just kind of new ideas in general. Because, like I said earlier, I'm really fucking tired of hearing the same 4-minute metalcore song or the same 5-minute thrash song with the same droning open note riffs. Give me something new. Give me something better, because we can do it. We're not all idiots. Like, we know what we're doing.
Sure.
As a scene. And I don't want any more laziness. I think that now is the time where metal can come back and take the throne. We've got, don't get me wrong, there's some good rap, hip-hop, whatever out there, but there's a lot of terrible shit taking over the airwaves right now, and I am not okay with it.
Right.
I don't know about you.
No.
But we need to change that shit, like, now.
Amen. I'm with you. You know, and it's funny because one of the core, I always say this, one of the core reasons that rock and metal in general, I think, has gone underground is because way too many fans of it are too lazy to find new stuff. People always say, well, rock ended in whatever year, 2000, 1995, whatever. And I always say bullshit to all of that. If you look, there's as many or more great bands that nobody knows about today.
Oh, absolutely.
Then,
Absolutely. And it's just under the surface a lot of the time. Like, I've seen a lot of bands that are starting to surface now that I feel like should have gotten a lot more notoriety a lot quicker. Like, I look at a band like Chemist, if you know Chemist.
Yeah.
So this kind of, I fucking adore Chemist. I shouldn't say love. Love is not enough.
Right.
They're finally getting traction as a band, but, I mean, they have a couple records out. The first record they put out was almost flawless. Like, what happened? And yet, the same year that people are doing that, they're like, oh, metal's dead. Rock is dead. Hell no, it's not.
Right. No, I did.
It's coming back up.
I'm 100% with you. And I'm I'm a big believer, and you may be or may not be, but I am a big believer that one of the biggest reasons that they say rock is dead or metal is dead or whatever is because of the older gen. Everybody loves to blame the millennials and blame the young people. I'm going to blame the old people. I'm going to blame everybody. I'm 50 years old, and I'll tell you straight up, I blame everybody that is my age that will sit there and tell me that everything ended with Deep Purple and LA Guns, and they still go and see Judas Priest or Deep Purple or whatever, but they don't try to find anything else past it.
At all.
It's bullshit.
It's 100% bullshit. And it's, so a good friend of mine is a concert photographer, and it's like, I'm lucky in the fact that I have a friend like that because she, for example, like 2 months ago, she shot Judas Priest, and then the next week she went to some hole-in-the-wall goth club and shot another goth band, and she's like, they were just as good. I don't know why people keep bitching.
Yeah.
And I could not agree with her more because we have so much good music. And yes, right now the scene of music is very saturated. So a lot of people see these bands that are quote-unquote commercial, whatever you want to call it, where because they're so accessible, they get access to the airwaves so much more frequently. So everybody probably thinks it's fucking dead.
Yeah. No,
but I don't think it is.
I'm with you. Now, listening to your, and I can't really just talk about part 2 because I listened to 1 and 2 and really dove in trying to get the story. And it's
thank you so much.
What I find unique about listening to it is yours is kind of a listen that you can listen to. What I'll say is either way. It's you can certainly listen for an hour and a half and get a concept type of a vibe, but at the same time you can pull out just about any track and throw it on and listen to it, and you'll be like, and it fits good in a metal mix somewhere. It's a unique quality that a lot of, especially people that have done concepts in the past, do not have. It's weird to have singles that fit outside of their wrapper, so to speak, from a concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was something that we didn't necessarily do consciously, but when we were going back over it, kind of looking through the record, we kind of realized, and we're very proud of that fact. If it's like, you look at a song like, let's go with our first single we ever released, Haunted. That song is, it's like a 4.5 minute, like kind of metalcore song, kind of like, it takes a little bit from like Swedish rock, death metal, and blah, blah, blah. But that whole song was just kind of put together, and then later we kind of realized how much it fit into the concept, and that's not actually made it on the record. And a lot of songs are like that, where the way the record was written is, we call it kind of the loose concept record, because we didn't go in trying to create a concept record, but rather we wrote a record, we came back to it, noticed that there were a lot of the same themes and ideas, and then after that we tried to kind of make everything work together. Sure. And that's kind of how that concept record happened, and I think that's kind of why it works that way. Is it wasn't originally written as a concept record, but rather became one.
Sure. Would you attribute the fact that it became one to, in a way, being similar to what you do know, which is stand-up comedy, where you can't get up on a stage and just tell random jokes. Everything kind of has to flow. Fit together. They all have to flow, and it all sort of needs to tell a story. And I almost wonder if maybe that's how this came together for you as far as music, is that you had that background of kind of loosely fitting a story together.
Yeah, honestly, as a lyricist, I think that definitely is part of it. Coming from this background of kind of theater, film, stand-up, like all these other artistic mediums where you need to have a plot line, you need to have an idea that all kind of weaves together. I think that definitely did influence it, because that's kind of the way I was always doing any of my artistic endeavors. Was it had to connect, it had to work together. If something didn't work, you throw it out.
Right.
I used to have a professor, actually, when I was studying acting and stand-up. He was teaching me stand-up class, and he used to tell me, kill your babies.
Right.
And kill your babies was his way of saying, even if you like a joke, if it doesn't fit with the rest, if it's not good enough to stand with the rest of your content, axe it. It's done. It's not worth it. You need to give it your best.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that happened with this record, because outside of the songs you see on the record, there's another probably like 15, maybe 20 that didn't make the cut.
Wow.
Yeah, we were kind of brutal about it, I won't lie to you. But that was also because we were not going to accept anything except for the best. Sure. I think it just had to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Why was this turned into 2 releases instead of just one bigger release? Was it simply timing, or do you feel like there's two separate messages to be told?
Well, it's kind of a couple of things. So the main thing was we realized firstly that we had 6 songs that kind of had a slightly more hopeful kind of lyrical content that all kind of fit together in like what we call the lighter half, and that's what became part 1. And then we had stuff that was thematically like much darker, and that's what kind of became part 2. So that was the big thing, is we realized that they all worked together, but they also worked as their own separate like ideas. It was kind of like this weird dichotomy of the record that we really found interesting, so kind of wanted to promote it as such. But outside of that, we also realized that was our debut release, and from a marketing standpoint, we wanted to be smart about it. We wanted to have the first record come out so that way people would be able to listen to who we are and help us grow our fan base. But then when part 2 came out, we would have the more attention already, and then we could start reaching out to bigger places to talk to do things with, and it allowed us to do things like being able to tour now and all these things, which has been amazing. We're really happy about it, but that's kind of what ended up happening, is it became about half an artistic choice of we have these 2 concepts that do work together, and that's kind of the point of having a part 1 and part 2 is you listen to it front to back, part 1 going into part 2, it makes total sense.
Right.
But if you separate it into the light and the dark, it still makes 100% sense. And we were really proud of that, so we wanted to do that. But the other half was, if we're going to do this release and really put our money where our mouth is on everything, when it comes to marketing, social media, fans, shows, all this, we needed to do it right.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
And so that's what we did.
No doubt. It reminds me, and this is going to be an obscure reference that I know I'll get and you might get because I know you listen to rap and nobody else is listening is probably going to get, but it reminds me in a whole lot of ways of maybe 10, 12 years ago when Ice Cube did the War and the Peace record as individuals as well as a collaborative, where if you listen to it all together, made sense. But from a marketing standpoint, it made a lot more sense to have two different, endeavors.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that was very similar to what we were trying to do. It was like, can it work cohesively as one piece, but also separately as the 2 pieces? So,
sure.
Yes, I understand your reference. So,
there we go. well, Geordy, since you have some tentacles, I guess, into other avenues of entertainment, have you considered taking the Wicked King and maybe exploring other places that you could go with it? Maybe book form or comic book form or short film or feature film or any of that type of stuff, or is it too early for that kind of a thought?
It's funny you say that. Well, so a couple of things. We've been working on a music video that is very much kind of based in the conceptual idea of the Wicked King and all these ideas, and we basically shot it as cinematic as possible.
Okay.
To make it basically into a short film. It's I'm not gonna lie, it's a little funny and it's a blast shooting it.
Right.
But that's kind of something that we have started to dive into. I don't know if we're gonna end up being like there's a band right now that's it's funny. We're gonna go see them. Me and my guitarist Will tomorrow, called Ice Nine Kills. Which firstly, I love the fact that there's a band named after a Kurt Vonnegut reference.
Right.
That's beautiful. But secondly, they shoot full on like 10-minute short films for each individual song in their last record.
Wow.
And I would love to do something like that. I think that would be fantastic. But it comes to the idea of maybe doing it as a comic book or a short film or something like that. I don't know if we're going to do that right now, but I would love the opportunity to do something like that. I think it'd be really cool because, right now there's been kind of a cool little influx of seeing more like pop punk and all this kind of stuff of musicals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'd be cool to take something like heavy metal and turn that into a musical.
Sure. Absolutely. And you specifically, your distinct background with entertainment and especially with stand-up comedy, because I don't care what anybody says. Stand-up comedy is the hardest medium of any of them. I mean, I
would not argue with you at all.
I know for a fact that I'm a funny guy and I can be funny, and people tell me that they laugh and laugh when they listen to me on the radio. And I've tried stand-up comedy and I was miserably unfunny. It's so hard. People do not.
It is so hard.
The thing that and you've done it, so obviously the hardest thing is not finding the jokes to tell. The hardest thing is timing your reactions and knowing when to talk with just your body and just your face. And oh my God, it's so hard. If you just tell it, you could tell something that's hysterically funny, but if you don't tell it in the right way, you are just shitting the bed.
Dead in the water. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I would agree. That being said, the one benefit of stand-up is you only got to worry about one person. When you're in a band,
right,
you got a bunch of other guys, which, when you're on stage doing stand-up, you can run around and do everything. If you run around and do everything on stage when there's 4 other people, you're going to smack into somebody, and it's not going to be fun.
Right. Definitely, man. Well, Geordy, with the Crown Remnant and with the Wicked King, now that you have the 2 parts that are out, are there going to be opportunities to tour? Or are you still working that out, or where are you at with that?
We're about to announce that, actually. I can't say too many details, but we're going to be hitting a lot of the West Coast as well as a little bit of the Midwest.
Okay.
And then we're going to hopefully later in next year be touring a little more, but that's still not quite set in stone.
Okay, excellent, man. Well, dude, the band is called the Crown Remnant. The current record is the Wicked King Part 2, and I strongly recommend anybody that picks up Part 2 should pick up Part 1 as well. Makes it that much more relatable. So why don't you tell people where they can go online to get more information on the band and on the records and where you're going to be touring and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So if you guys are interested in hearing anything from us at all, we're really active on Facebook, where you can find us at The Crown Remnant, and on Instagram, same name, as well as Twitter. Outside of that, our website is crownremnant.com. We have everything on there. We have an article usually every other week with a bunch of info. We're going to have tour dates on there soon and everything else. And stay tuned because we do have a new music video coming out soon. I can't say more than that, but please stay tuned because it's going to be fantastic.
Excellent. Well, Geordy, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the new record, maybe tell us a story about it. So what would you like us to wrap up with?
Oh, okay. Inferno, 100% Inferno. That was one of my favorite songs I think we've ever written. It's funny because it actually came back to my film and theater background because I wrote a play about hell, purgatory, and heaven back in 2016, and I ended up diving back into Dante's Divine Comedy for that, and that's what ended up inspiring Inferno. That entire song is about the first book of Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, also known as Inferno. There's a whole video game about it. There's a whole everything about it. It's amazing. I love it. And because of that, we kind of went in and we wrote that song in like 3 hours. So weird because we're that band that kind of gets hyper-focused on everything, every little thing possible. And with that, we just took 3 hours and we wrote a whole song. And it ended up being probably one of the best things we've ever written. And I'm just absurdly proud of how much went into that and how much came out of that. Because 3 hours is nothing for us. And yet I think it is one of the best songs we've ever written. It's got blistering riffs. It's got a really cool drum, like I call it like a theme or a motif, where it starts the song and it also re-enters the final part of the song. And it's just so much fun to play live. The energy is just palpable every time we play it. And I just love that song. Anything about hell or anything like that, I shouldn't be happy about hell, I suppose. But at the same time, hell yeah,
Right. Well, let's check it out right now. Let's let the fans hear it for themselves. This is Inferno. It's the Crown Remnant right here on your Classic Metal Show.